My name is Harper Bennett, and am 32 years old. I never thought I'd be sitting in my office, staring at my phone, feeling my entire world tilt sideways, because of a text message that wasn't even meant for me. I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through college, climbed my way up to senior financial analyst, and saved for 8 years to buy my beautiful 3-bedroom house in suburban Portland, Oregon. That house was my sanctuary, my achievement, my proof that hard work pays off. But right now, my mother was on the phone asking suspicious questions about my upcoming 2-week business trip to London. And my gut was screaming that something was very, very wrong. Before we dive into this wild story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you've ever dealt with entitled family members, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. And subscribe, because trust me, you'll want to see how this trap unfolds. Now, let's get into the betrayal that changed everything. The text came through while I was in a meeting. My phone buzzed, and I glanced down to see a message from my sister-in-law Brittany in a group chat I didn't even know existed. The message read, quote, "Can't wait to finally have a real bedroom. Harper's place is going to be perfect." I felt my stomach drop like I'd missed a step going downstairs. I immediately opened the chat history and saw weeks of planning. My parents, my brother Tyler, and Brittany had been coordinating this move for over a month. They discussed which rooms they'd take, how they'd rearrange my furniture, even what excuse they'd give me if I somehow found out early. My mother had written, "Harper will never know if we're careful. She has so much space anyway." My father responded, "It's family, she should share whether she knows it or not." I sat frozen at my desk, reading message after message that proved my family had zero respect for me or my property. This wasn't a surprise, really, when I thought about the pattern that had defined my entire life. I was always the responsible one while Tyler was the golden child who could do no wrong. When Tyler went to college, my parents paid every penny of his tuition, room, board, even giving him spending money for entertainment. When I went to college 2 years earlier, they told me education was my own responsibility, and I needed to learn independence. So I worked as a waitress during breakfast shifts, a library assistant in the afternoons, and a bartender on weekends. I survived on 4 hours of sleep and instant ramen for 4 years straight while Tyler partied his way through the easier path my parents paved for him. The inequality didn't stop after graduation. Tyler dropped out junior year, and instead of disappointment, my parents said education isn't for everyone and welcomed him home with open arms. I graduated with honors, got an entry-level analyst position, and moved into a tiny studio apartment that cost half my paycheck. I worked overtime, took extra certifications, networked relentlessly, and fought for every promotion over the next decade. Meanwhile, Tyler bounced from job to job, 7 different positions in 5 years, quitting when he got bored or getting fired when he didn't show up, every time. My parents supported him financially and emotionally, assuring him he'd find his path eventually. Now, at 28 years old, Tyler had been unemployed for 4 months, married to Brittany who claimed to be an influencer, despite having only 300 followers, and they were living in my parents' basement rent-free. I called my older sister Rachel immediately after discovering the group chat. Rachel lived across the country in Boston and had distanced herself from the family dynamics years ago after her own experiences with the favoritism. When I told her what I'd found, she was furious but not surprised. She revealed that our parents had actually approached her 2 weeks earlier, asking her to support their plan to move Tyler into my house while I was away. Rachel had refused immediately and told them it was a terrible idea that violated every boundary imaginable. Our parents had responded by excluding her from family updates and telling her she didn't understand how hard things were for Tyler right now. Rachel told me the full scope of their plan was even worse than I'd realized from the text messages. They intended to change my locks, claiming it was for security purposes, and give Tyler and Brittany my master bedroom. The plan was for me to come home from London and simply accept the new living arrangement because family takes care of family. My hands were shaking as Rachel spoke. This wasn't just about the house. This was about a lifetime of being taken for granted, overlooked, and expected to sacrifice, while Tyler received endless support without ever being asked to give anything in return. I remembered lending Tyler $5,000 3 years ago when he swore he'd pay me back within 6 months. I never saw a penny of that money. I remembered letting him borrow my car for a weekend and getting it back with a dented bumper and an empty gas tank. No apology or offer to pay for repairs that cost me $2,300. I remembered missing my own college graduation ceremony because my parents insisted they couldn't miss Tyler's high school football championship game that happened the same day. When I protested, my mother said I'd have other accomplishments to celebrate, but Tyler only had one senior season. The pain of those memories mixed with the current betrayal created something new inside me, not just hurt, but determination. This was the line. This was where I stopped being the family doormat and started protecting what it earned. I told Rachel I wasn't going to let this happen, and she offered her full support. She even suggested I document everything because, knowing our parents, they'd deny it all if confronted without proof. That conversation planted the seed of an idea that would grow into the most elaborate trap I'd ever set. If they wanted to violate my home and my trust, they'd do it on camera, with every second documented, and they'd face real consequences for once in their entitled lives. I took a personal day off work the next morning, telling my boss I had an urgent family matter to handle, which was technically true. My first call was to my best friend Madison, who happened to be a real estate attorney. We'd been friends since college, and she was one of the few people who understood the complicated dynamics of my family because she'd witnessed them firsthand over the years. When I explained the situation, Madison immediately shifted into legal mode. She confirmed that my parents had absolutely no legal right to enter my property without permission, regardless of their relationship to me. The house was solely in my name. I'd never given them keys, and any entry without my explicit consent would legally constitute trespassing. If they moved belongings in and refused to leave, that elevated to unlawful occupation of property. Madison asked if I'd ever given my parents a key for emergencies, and I said no. I'd specifically avoided that, because I valued my privacy. She then asked how they planned to get in, and we reviewed the group chat messages again more carefully. Buried in an older exchange, my father mentioned he had a copy of my house key from years ago. I realized he must have taken my keys at some point during a family dinner and had a duplicate made without my knowledge or permission. That single detail made Madison even more adamant that I had a strong legal case. Making an unauthorized copy of someone's house key and planning to use it for entry was premeditated, and that would matter if this went to court. We spent the next 3 hours developing a comprehensive strategy. Madison explained that the best approach was to let them execute their plan while documenting everything, then present them with irrefutable evidence and legal consequences. She cautioned me that this would likely destroy my relationship with my parents and Tyler, possibly permanently, and I needed to be prepared for that outcome. I told her I'd already lost them years ago when they made it clear Tyler's comfort mattered more than my respect. This wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries and showing them that actions have consequences. Madison drafted a formal cease and desist letter template that we'd use after I had video evidence. She also prepared a police report template for filing theft and property damage charges if necessary. The security system became my first priority. I researched companies and found Secure Home Plus, a local business with excellent reviews and same-day installation available. I called them that afternoon and explained I needed comprehensive coverage before leaving for an international trip. The technician, a man named Russell, came out that evening for a consultation. I told him I wanted cameras covering every possible entry point and several interior locations. Russell recommended a system with 8 cameras covering the front door, back door, garage, driveway, living room, kitchen, hallway, and a discrete camera in my home office. Each camera would have night vision, motion detection, and live streaming to my phone. Everything would record to cloud storage automatically. So even if someone found and destroyed the cameras, the footage would be safe. The installation cost $2,500, which made me hesitate for about 5 seconds before I remembered this was my home, my safety, and my peace of mind. Russell's team installed everything the next day, working efficiently to hide wires and position cameras for optimal coverage. They taught me how to use the mobile app, set up motion alerts, and access recorded footage. I tested the system repeatedly, watching myself on my phone as I walked through my own house. The quality was crystal clear, even in low light. Russell also upgraded my door locks to smart locks that I could control and monitor remotely. I could see exactly when doors were opened, lock or unlock them from anywhere in the world, and receive alerts for any access attempts. The next element of my trap was creating the illusion that I suspected nothing. I deliberately left my house looking normal and lived in. I didn't remove valuables or lock away important items because I wanted to see what they'd do with full access. In fact, I strategically placed some bait. I left my laptop visible on my desk, knowing Tyler had always been envious of my electronics. I left a jewelry box on my dresser with several pieces that had sentimental value. I even left an envelope in my desk drawer containing $500 in cash, money I'd been saving for no particular reason. Each of these items would serve as a test of their character and, if stolen, evidence of theft. I needed witnesses and backup, people who knew the truth and could corroborate my story if my family tried to twist the narrative later. I spoke with my neighbor Mrs. Chen, a 70-year-old retired teacher who'd lived next door since before I bought the house. She was sharp, observant, and had always been kind to me. I explained the situation in general terms, saying my family might try to enter my house without permission while I was away, and I'd appreciate if she kept an eye out for any unusual activity. Mrs. Chen was appalled that family would violate my trust that way and immediately agreed to help. I gave her my phone number and asked her to text me if she saw anyone at my property. I also gave her the number for my attorney Madison, just in case of emergency. The legal documentation was crucial for establishing a paper trail. Madison drafted a formal letter to my parents explicitly stating they did not have permission to enter my property for any reason during my absence or at any other time without my advance knowledge and approval. The letter was professionally worded but absolutely clear in its meaning. We sent it via certified mail, requiring a signature upon delivery, so they couldn't later claim they never received it or didn't understand my position. I kept copies of everything: the certified mail receipt, the letter itself, screenshots of the group chat messages, and a detailed timeline of events. Madison told me this level of documentation would be invaluable if we needed to pursue legal action. I also prepared myself emotionally for what was coming. I started journaling every night, writing out my feelings about the family dynamics, the years of inequality, and my decision to finally set boundaries. The journal entries helped me process the grief of potentially losing relationships with my parents and brother. I wrote about memories from childhood, analyzing them with adult eyes and seeing patterns I'd missed before. I wrote about the career sacrifices I'd made, the personal relationships I'd struggled with because of family drama, and the person I wanted to become moving forward. By the end of the week, I felt centered and resolute. This wasn't about hurting them. It was about protecting myself and demanding the respect I deserved. Wednesday night arrived, and I quietly left my house at 8 in the evening. 3 full suitcases loaded in my car. I'd told my parents my flight was Thursday afternoon, but I'd actually rebooked for Thursday morning and planned to spend Wednesday night at Madison's apartment across town. Before I left, I walked through every room of my house one final time, looking at the space I'd worked so hard to create. The living room with its comfortable gray sofa and the landscape paintings I'd collected over years. The kitchen with its white cabinets and the fancy espresso machine I'd saved up to buy. The master bedroom with its peaceful blue walls and the bed I'd picked out so carefully. Everything represented a choice I'd made, money I'd earned, and dreams I'd achieved. The thought of Tyler and Brittany treating this space like their personal property made my blood boil, but I channeled that anger into determination. At Madison's apartment, we tested the security system one final time. Every camera showed clear footage. Every motion sensor worked perfectly. The smart locks responded instantly to commands from my phone. We even did a practice run where Madison walked through my house while I watched from her living room, and I could see every detail in real time. The system was flawless. I tried to sleep that night but managed maybe 3 hours, my mind racing with possibilities and scenarios. What if they didn't show up? What if they did but didn't do anything incriminating? What if the cameras failed? Madison reassured me that even if the technology failed, we had the certified letter proving ID explicitly denied them access, which was enough for a trespassing case. Thursday morning, I posted carefully curated photos to social media showing me at the airport. The photos were actually from a work trip 2 months earlier, but no one would know that. I posted a cheerful caption about being excited for London and thanking everyone for their support of my career. Within minutes, the comments rolled in. My mother wrote, "Have a wonderful trip, sweetie. We love you so much." My father commented, "Safe travels, make us proud." Tyler wrote, "Have fun, sis. Bring me back some English candy." The fakeness of their messages made my stomach turn. They were performing love and support publicly while planning to violate my home privately. I responded to each comment with heart emojis, playing my role in this theater of false family affection. My actual flight departed at 10 in the morning Thursday. I boarded the plane, settled into my economy seat since I was paying for this trip myself, and checked the camera system one last time before switching my phone to airplane mode. Everything was quiet at home. Empty rooms, silent hallways, peaceful stillness. I slept better on that flight than I had in weeks, probably because I was finally taking action instead of just absorbing mistreatment. When I landed at Heathrow Airport in London Friday morning local time, which was 2 in the morning Portland time, I turned off airplane mode and watched my phone explode with notifications. Motion detected at front door. Motion detected in living room. Motion detected in kitchen. Motion detected in hallway. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I quickly connected to the airport Wi-Fi and opened the camera app with shaking hands. The footage loaded and I watched in real time as my father unlocked my front door using a key ID never authorized him to have. He stepped inside my house like he owned it, looking around with an expression of entitlement that made me want to scream. My mother followed close behind, then Tyler carrying a heavy box, and finally Brittany dragging a suitcase and complaining even as she crossed my threshold. I sat in the Heathrow Airport terminal, exhausted from the overnight flight but suddenly wide awake, watching my family invade my home. My mother immediately started directing traffic like a general commanding troops. She pointed Tyler toward the master bedroom, telling him that would be his and Brittany's room. Tyler grinned and said something I couldn't hear, but his body language screamed excitement and triumph. Brittany followed him down the hallway, and I switched camera views to watch them enter my private sanctuary, my bedroom, the space where I slept and dressed and felt most vulnerable. Brittany looked around with a critical eye and said, loud enough for the camera microphone to pick up, "I thought it would be nicer. This is kind of basic." My father made multiple trips to his truck, bringing in more boxes, garbage bags stuffed with clothes, and Tyler's enormous gaming setup complete with monitors, consoles, and a ridiculous racing-style chair. My mother had moved into my kitchen and was rearranging my cabinets, actually taking my dishes out and reorganizing them according to her preferences. She muttered to herself about how I had things in all the wrong places, and how much better this layout would be. Tyler set up his gaming equipment in my home office, pushing my desk to the side and running cables everywhere without any care for the space. Brittany had opened my closet and was going through my clothes, holding up items and making disgusted faces. I recorded everything. my fingers taking screenshots and saving video clips compulsively. I called Madison even though it was barely 6 in the morning London time. She answered on the second ring, her voice alert because ID warned her this might happen. I was shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone steady as I described what I was watching. Madison told me to breathe, to document everything, and to let them continue. The more they did, the stronger our case would be. She reminded me that this was about letting them reveal their true character without interference. Every action they took was their choice, their responsibility, their consequence. For the next 2 hours, I sat in that airport terminal and watched my family completely take over my house. They ordered pizza using my address, and somehow charged it to an account I didn't even know they'd accessed. They sprawled across my furniture, leaving food wrappers and drink cans everywhere without any thought of cleaning up. Brittany took a long bath in my tub, using my expensive bath products that ID splurged on as a rare treat to myself. Tyler found my laptop and tried to log into it, failing because ID changed all my passwords the week before, but the attempt itself was captured on camera. At one point, he said to Brittany, "She probably has banking info on here. We could really use that." Brittany responded, "Check her desk, maybe the password is written down somewhere." I watched them rifle through my personal papers, invading my privacy on camera, and I knew I had everything I needed. Saturday and Sunday became a surreal blur of managing my actual work obligations in London while obsessively monitoring the violation happening in my Portland home. I was supposed to be focused on meetings with international clients and presentations about market analysis, but every free moment found me hunched over my phone or laptop watching the security camera feeds. My colleagues probably thought I was incredibly dedicated to stay so glued to my devices, never realizing I was witnessing a slow-motion betrayal 6,000 miles away. The time difference meant their daytime was my nighttime, so I developed a bizarre sleep schedule of catching naps during London business hours and staying awake through the night to watch my house in real time. Saturday morning in Portland, my parents left around 9 o'clock, and I felt a brief moment of relief thinking maybe Tyler and Brittany would behave better without supervision. That hope died quickly. By Saturday evening, cars started arriving at my house. People I'd never seen before walked through my front door carrying cases of beer and bags of snacks. Tyler was throwing a party in my home without permission, without even the pretense of respect for my property. The camera footage showed approximately 15 people crowding into my living room. Loud music playing, people dancing and drinking, and treating my sanctuary like a cheap rental space. Someone knocked over one of my lamps and it shattered on the floor. And instead of cleaning it up, they just pushed the broken pieces under the sofa. I texted Mrs. Chen asking if the noise was bothering her. She responded immediately that it was quite loud and asked if she should call the police. I told her not yet. I was handling it, even though every part of me wanted to see the cops show up and shut down Tyler's party immediately. But Madison's advice echoed in my mind about letting them dig themselves deeper. Every additional violation was more evidence, more justification, more proof of their complete disregard for boundaries. The party continued until 3 in the morning Portland time, which meant I watched it until 11 in the morning London time, my eyes burning with exhaustion and rage. Sunday was marginally better only because Tyler and Brittany slept until 2 in the afternoon, probably nursing hangovers from their unauthorized party. When they finally emerged from my bedroom, they didn't clean up any of the mess from the night before. Beer bottles covered my coffee table. Food remnants were ground into my carpet. The whole house smelled like cigarettes even though I had a strict no-smoking policy. They ordered delivery food again, more charges I'd have to dispute later, and spent the afternoon sprawled on my furniture watching television like entitled kings and queens of a castle they'd stolen. Brittany posted Instagram stories showing parts of my house with captions like "new place, new vibes and living that upgrade life." I screenshot every single post. Monday brought a new level of audacity. Tyler had 3 of his friends come over to help him set up what he called his content creation studio in my living room. They literally rearranged all my furniture, pushing my carefully chosen sofa against the wall to make room for his gaming setup and filming equipment. They took down the landscape paintings I'd collected over years and replaced them with Tyler's movie posters and gaming merchandise. These were strangers handling my possessions without permission, and Tyler directed them like he had every right to redesign my home according to his preferences. I watched one guy nearly drop my expensive television while moving it, and my heart stopped until he managed to steady it. Brittany spent Monday going through my bedroom closet more thoroughly, actually taking my clothes out and putting them in garbage bags. I heard her on a video call with a friend saying she was basically redecorating the whole place because my style was too boring and she wanted to make it more her vibe. She took several pieces of my jewelry, holding them up to the camera and asking her friend which ones she should keep. That was theft. Plain and simple, captured in high-definition video with audio commentary. I made a note of every item she touched, every piece she pocketed, building my evidence file with meticulous detail that would make any prosecutor happy. Tuesday might have been the worst day emotionally because Tyler posted a YouTube video titled "House Tour Our New Place." I watched it 3 times, forcing myself to see it through the eyes of his subscribers who wouldn't know this was my home, my property, my achievement that he was claiming as his own. He walked through every room with his camera, talking about how excited he was to finally have space to grow his content creation business, and how this house was perfect for his needs. He showed my kitchen, my bathroom, my office, everything, without once mentioning that none of it belonged to him. The comments section filled with congratulations and excitement, people telling him how proud they were of his success, and it made me physically ill. Wednesday brought my parents back for another visit, and I watched them enable Tyler even further. They brought more of his belongings, helping him move in like this was a permanent situation rather than the temporary invasion they'd originally implied in their text messages. My mother actually said to Tyler, "See, I told you Harper wouldn't mind. She has so much, and you need this right now." My father nodded in agreement and added, "Family shares with family. That's how we raised you kids." Tyler responded, "I might stay longer than a few months. This setup is perfect for what I'm building." Brittany chimed in talking about how the spare bedroom would make an excellent nursery when they decided to have a baby. That's when I realized they had no intention of ever leaving. This wasn't a temporary crash spot while Tyler got back on his feet. This was a permanent takeover attempt, and my parents were fully supporting it. They genuinely believed I should sacrifice my home, my privacy, my autonomy, because Tyler needed something and I had something to take. The entitlement was breathtaking in its audacity. My mother went through my mail, which is a federal crime, opening my bank statements and commenting on my account balances. My father found the emergency cash envelope in my desk and Tyler took it, saying I owed him anyway from all the times I hadn't been there for him over the years. Brittany discovered my jewelry box and started trying things on, admiring herself in my mirror wearing my grandmother's necklace and my college graduation earrings. She put several pieces in her purse, casually stealing family heirlooms like they were costume jewelry from a thrift store. Every violation was documented, every theft recorded, every disrespectful comment captured. I had hundreds of video clips organized by date and severity, a comprehensive record of exactly who my family really was when they thought no one was watching. Thursday morning in London, which was 2 a.m. in Portland, I decided I'd seen enough. 7 days of watching my home be violated, my property stolen, and my boundaries obliterated had given me more than sufficient evidence for any legal action I might need to take. I'd barely slept, surviving on coffee and righteous anger, but I felt clear-headed and determined as I began executing my response. The first step was simple but satisfying. I opened my smart lock app and remotely changed every single door code. Tyler and Brittany were currently inside my house, asleep in my bed, but when they eventually tried to leave and come back, they'd find themselves locked out of a property they'd never had permission to enter in the first place. The second step was the formal legal notice. Madison had everything prepared and ready to send. At exactly 9 o'clock Thursday morning Portland time, a courier delivered a certified letter to my house. I watched on the security cameras as Tyler answered the door, confused about who would be sending him mail at this address. He signed for the envelope, probably assuming it was something harmless, and opened it standing right there in my doorway. I watched his face change as he read the contents. The letter, on official law firm letterhead, informed him and any other occupants that they were trespassing on private property, had been captured on surveillance engaging in theft and property damage, and had exactly 24 hours to vacate the premises or face criminal charges and civil litigation. Tyler's reaction was immediate and panicked. He called for Brittany, his voice high and stressed, and showed her the letter. She read it, and her face went pale. They stood in my living room, surrounded by their belongings and my stolen property, finally realizing they'd made a catastrophic mistake. Tyler immediately called our mother, and I listened to his side of the conversation through the camera audio. He was talking fast, words tumbling over each other, asking if this was some kind of joke or mistake. I could hear my mother's voice faintly through his phone, loud and agitated even from a distance. Within 30 seconds, my own phone rang with a call from my mother. I let it ring twice before answering, wanting to seem calm and collected rather than eager for confrontation. I said hello in a neutral tone, and my mother immediately started yelling. She demanded to know what this legal letter was about, and why I was threatening her son with police action over a simple family arrangement. I responded that there was nothing simple about breaking into someone's home without permission, which is called trespassing regardless of biological relationships. My mother sputtered that they hadn't broken in because they had a key, and I calmly explained that having an unauthorized copy of a key and using it without the owner's permission was still illegal entry. I told her I had everything on camera, every moment of the past 7 days documented with timestamps and crystal clear footage. My mother tried a different approach, switching from aggression to guilt. She said I was being incredibly selfish and cruel to my own brother who was just trying to get his life together. I asked her how stealing my cash and jewelry was helping Tyler get his life together. She claimed she didn't know what I was talking about. So I told her I could send her video clips of Tyler taking $500 from my desk and Brittany pocketing my grandmother's necklace. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds before my mother said I was spying on family, which was a violation of trust. I actually laughed at that statement. I told her that installing security cameras in my own home was perfectly legal, and that she was the one who violated trust by planning this invasion behind my back. My father took the phone from my mother, and his tone was immediately more aggressive and authoritative, the voice he used when he expected me to fall in line and obey. He said I needed to stop this nonsense immediately and work with family instead of against them. I told him I was working with the family I chose, which included my attorney and my sister Rachel, and working against the family members who'd committed crimes against me. He said crimes was too strong a word for family helping family, and I countered that breaking and entering, theft, and property damage were the legal definitions of what had occurred regardless of his feelings on family dynamics. He demanded I drop all of this and let Tyler stay for a few months until he got on his feet, and I said Tyler had 24 hours to remove himself and all his belongings or I'd call the police. While we were still arguing, I sent both my parents the evidence compilation I'd been preparing. It was a 15-minute video file that showed the greatest hits of the past week. My father entering with his unauthorized key, my mother rearranging my kitchen and going through my mail, Tyler and Brittany moving into my master bedroom like they owned it, the party with 15 strangers in my house, Tyler posting his YouTube house tour claiming it was his place, my mother commenting on my bank statements, Tyler taking my emergency cash, Brittany stealing my jewelry. I let the video speak for itself, each clip more damning than the last, each one showing exactly who they were when they thought they could get away with it. My father called back within 5 minutes of receiving the video, and his voice had changed. The authority was gone, replaced with something closer to panic. He asked where I'd gotten those cameras and how long they'd been installed. I told him that wasn't relevant information he needed to know. He asked if I'd been planning this, setting them up, and I corrected him that I'd been protecting my property from a threat I'd learned about through their careless text messages. My mother grabbed the phone again and was crying now, saying I was tearing the family apart over material possessions. I responded that they'd torn the family apart when they decided my home was community property they could occupy without permission. She said I was being dramatic, and I said she was being criminal. The phone calls continued for hours, cycling between my parents and Tyler. Each conversation covered the same ground with them, trying different manipulation tactics. They tried anger, telling me I was ungrateful and selfish. They tried guilt, reminding me of everything they'd done for me growing up, which was notably less than what they'd done for Tyler. They tried bargaining, offering to pay rent if I'd let Tyler stay, which I rejected because this was never about money. They tried minimizing, claiming it wasn't that serious and I was overreacting. Nothing worked because I'd spent 7 days watching them disrespect everything I'd built, and my resolve had turned to steel. Tyler sent me a text that said, "Okay, I'm sorry, just give us a week to find a place." I responded that he had 24 hours per the legal notice and I wouldn't be negotiating extensions. He texted back asking me to be reasonable, and I told him I was being extremely reasonable considering I could press charges immediately for theft and property damage. He had the nerve to say it wasn't that serious, so I sent him an itemized list of everything I'd documented: the broken lamp, the stolen cash, the stolen jewelry, the cigarette damage, the food and product theft, the unauthorized party, the furniture damage, the mail tampering. The total value exceeded $5,000, which in Oregon elevated certain charges from misdemeanors to felonies. Meanwhile, Brittany was having her own meltdown on social media. She posted a long Instagram story rant about toxic family members who care more about material things than human relationships. She didn't name me directly, but it was obvious who she meant when she wrote about being kicked out with nowhere to go by someone who had so much space but zero compassion. The comments section became a battlefield, with some of her friends supporting her while others who knew the truth pushed back. One mutual acquaintance commented, "Maybe don't move into someone's house without asking first," and Brittany deleted the whole post within an hour. But I'd already screenshot everything for my records because digital evidence has a way of disappearing when people realize how bad they look. Thursday afternoon in Portland brought an escalation I should have anticipated but somehow still surprised me with its audacity. My parents drove over to my house with my Uncle Frank, my father's older brother who'd always been the family enforcer for maintaining traditional hierarchies and keeping younger generations in line. They set up what they called an intervention, positioning a laptop in my living room and video calling me like this was some kind of official family tribunal. I was in my London hotel room getting ready for dinner with colleagues when my phone rang with a video call from an unknown number. I answered to find 4 faces staring at me through my own laptop camera. My mother, my father, Uncle Frank, and Tyler, with Brittany hovering in the background. My father started speaking in his most authoritative tone, the one he used when he expected immediate compliance. He said they needed to talk sense into me before I did something I'd regret for the rest of my life. I responded that I was currently getting ready for a work dinner in London and this was highly inappropriate timing for an ambush. My mother jumped in, saying family is never inappropriate and we needed to sort this out right now before things got out of hand. I pointed out that things had gotten out of hand the moment they broke into my home, but she waved that away like I was quibbling over minor details. Uncle Frank cleared his throat and said he was disappointed in me. That he'd expected better from someone he'd always thought was the most level-headed of his nieces and nephews. I asked Uncle Frank, with all due respect, how this situation concerned him at all, since it was my property and my boundaries that had been violated. He responded that family concerns all of us and when one member is causing pain to others, the extended family has a responsibility to step in. I found that interesting since no one had stepped in during the years when I was working 3 jobs to afford college while Tyler got full financial support, or when I was paying for car damage Tyler caused, or when I'd loaned him $5,000 that was never repaid. Uncle Frank looked uncomfortable and said those were separate issues, and I told him no, they were all part of the same pattern of me being expected to give while Tyler was encouraged to take. The manipulation tactics came fast and overlapping. My mother cried, her tears looking genuine now rather than performative, and talked about all the sacrifices she'd made raising us. She reminded me that she'd given birth to me, nursed me, stayed up nights when I was sick, and this was how I repaid her unconditional love. I responded that unconditional love shouldn't require conditional surrender of my boundaries and property. She said I was twisting her words and making everything about material possessions when it should be about family bonds. I said family bonds require mutual respect and they'd shown me none. My father interjected that respect goes both ways and I was showing profound disrespect to them right now. I asked him if making an unauthorized key to my house was respectful. He had no answer to that. Tyler tried his own approach, going for the sibling connection. He said he was my brother and brothers and sisters were supposed to help each other through hard times. I agreed that helping each other was lovely when it involved asking for help and receiving freely given assistance. What they'd done wasn't helping, it was taking. And there was a fundamental difference between those two actions. Tyler said I was being pedantic about semantics when the real issue was that he needed support and I had the resources to provide it. I told him I'd provided support for years in the form of loans, gifts, patience, and excuses, and all I'd gotten in return was more requests and zero accountability. He looked genuinely confused, like he couldn't comprehend why past behavior should influence current situations. That's when I decided to present the evidence that would cut through all the manipulation and excuses. I shared my screen and pulled up my meticulously organized files. First, I showed bank records documenting the $5,000 loan ID given Tyler 3 years ago, including his text messages promising to pay me back within 6 months. I showed that 3 years had passed with zero repayment and multiple ignored requests for even partial payment. Next, I pulled up receipts from the car damage Tyler had caused, $2,300 in repairs that ID paid because Tyler claimed he didn't have the money and would pay me back later. Again, no repayment ever materialized. I showed a calculation I'd done of every time Tyler had asked me for money over the past 3 years, which totaled approximately $12,000 in loans, gifts, and covered expenses. I looked directly at the camera and said very clearly that I'd been helping Tyler for years and had been taking advantage of me for years. Now had escalated from asking and taking to simply stealing, and that was where I drew the line. The room on the other end of the video call went silent. No one seemed to have a response to the documented evidence of Tyler's pattern of taking without giving, borrowing without repaying, and now stealing without remorse. Finally, my father broke the silence by saying that none of that justified me threatening to destroy Tyler's life with criminal charges over a family misunderstanding. I responded that it wasn't a misunderstanding when you plan for weeks to move into someone's house without their permission. That was premeditated invasion. The threats started coming then, which told me I was winning the argument. My father said if I didn't drop this entire situation immediately, I'd be out of the family permanently. I told him I was voluntarily removing myself from a family structure that didn't respect me as an autonomous adult. My mother said I'd regret this decision when they were gone and I had no parents to turn to. I responded that I'd regret more if I spent my life being a doormat for people who saw my success as their entitlement. Tyler said he'd never forgive me for this betrayal. And I actually laughed at the word betrayal, coming from someone who'd just spent a week squatting in my house. I told him I didn't need his forgiveness, because I hadn't done anything wrong. What I needed was him out of my house within the next 12 hours. Uncle Frank tried to position himself as a mediator, asking if there was any middle ground we could find. He suggested that maybe Tyler could pay me rent and stay for a few months while looking for work. I said the middle ground would have been Tyler asking if he could stay in my house temporarily, respecting my answer whatever it was, and treating my property with care if ID said yes. Instead, he chose to steal his way in and disrespect everything I owned. Uncle Frank said crime was a very strong word for what was essentially a family miscommunication. I pulled up Oregon's legal statutes on my screen and read him the definition of criminal trespass, theft in the third degree, and criminal mischief. Every single element of those crimes had been met by the actions documented in my videos. My final ultimatum was clear and non-negotiable. I told them they had 12 hours remaining on the 24-hour notice. I'd be tracking via my security cameras whether they vacated the premises. If they were not completely moved out with all their belongings removed by 9 o'clock Friday morning Portland time, I would immediately call the police and file formal charges for trespassing, theft, and property damage. My father asked what I would do if they simply refused to leave. I told him I'd have them arrested for trespassing, and I'd pursue the maximum penalties allowed by law. My mother asked if I'd really dare to do that to my own family. I looked directly into the camera and said yes, without hesitation or regret, because they'd proven they weren't acting like family and I had no obligation to be victimized by people who happened to share my DNA. Tyler said I was destroying the family and everyone would know what I'd done. I responded that everyone would know what I'd done because I had video evidence that told the true story. Brittany shouted from the background that I was a heartless person who valued things over people, and I shouted back that I valued respect and boundaries over being stolen from and lied to. The video call descended into everyone talking over each other until I simply said I was done with this conversation, done with the manipulation, and done being treated like my hard work was their inheritance. I hung up and sat in my London hotel room shaking, not from fear or doubt, but from the adrenaline rush of finally standing up for myself without apology or compromise. Madison called within minutes of the intervention ending. She'd been standing by in case I needed legal support during the call. She told me I'd handled it perfectly, staying calm while presenting facts and maintaining my boundaries despite intense pressure. Rachel called right after, having heard about the intervention through the family gossip network, and said she was incredibly proud of me for not backing down. She said this was the moment I'd been building toward my entire life, the moment I stopped accepting unequal treatment and demanded the respect I deserved. For the first time in days, I felt something other than anger. I felt strong. I felt free. I felt like I was finally becoming the person I was supposed to be. Thursday evening in Portland, with only 8 hours remaining on the deadline, Tyler and Brittany finally started packing. I watched through the cameras as they moved slowly and resentfully through my house, throwing their belongings into boxes and bags with aggressive movements that spoke to their anger. Brittany kept picking up my possessions and looking at them like she was deciding whether to take them anyway, despite being caught on camera stealing. Tyler moved through the rooms, unplugging his gaming equipment with exaggerated sighs and comments to Brittany about how unfair this whole situation was. Neither of them showed any signs of remorse or understanding that they'd done something wrong. Instead, they acted like victims of my cruelty rather than consequences of their choices. The petty revenge attempts were captured in detail. I watched Tyler walk over to my refrigerator, open it to reveal the food inside, and then unplug it from the wall. He told Brittany with a smirk that I could buy new food with all my money. Brittany went into my bedroom and poured an entire bottle of my shampoo onto the carpet in a vindictive act that would require professional cleaning to fix. They left trash throughout the house deliberately, piling garbage on my coffee table and kitchen counters, instead of using the trash can that was right there. Tyler went around the house removing light bulbs from fixtures, leaving me with darkness in rooms until I could replace them. He even left his broken gaming chair in the middle of my living room with a note that said, "Gift from your loving brother, enjoy." My parents arrived around 9 o'clock Thursday evening to help with the move, and instead of being voices of reason, they enabled the destruction. My mother actually told Tyler to take whatever he needed, gesturing at my kitchen supplies like they were his to claim. I watched Tyler pack up my dishes, my towels, and several small appliances I'd bought for myself. My father unplugged my Wi-Fi router, examined it, and then put it in a box with Tyler's electronics. He said loudly, probably for the camera, that I could afford to buy a new one with my fancy salary. The value of items they were stealing kept climbing, and I documented every single object that left my house in their possession. Madison had advised me to let them take whatever they wanted because it only strengthened the case if I decided to pursue charges. Every theft was more evidence. Every act of property damage was another item on the list of offenses. By the time they finished packing and loading their vehicles, I'd calculated approximately $3,200 in stolen property and $1,800 in deliberate damage to my home. The carpet would need professional cleaning for the shampoo stain. The refrigerator contents had already started spoiling without power. The walls had scuff marks from them carelessly moving furniture. The broken lamp from their party still needed replacement. This wasn't just an inconvenience. This was malicious destruction of my property out of spite. They left at 11:43 at night, just 17 minutes before the 24-hour deadline would have expired. Tyler left the keys on my kitchen counter arranged in the shape of a middle finger, because apparently, he had the emotional maturity of a teenager. Next to the keys was a note in his handwriting that said, "Hope you're happy now, you got what you wanted." The irony was that I didn't want any of this. I wanted a family that respected me. I wanted a brother who treated me like a person instead of a resource. I wanted parents who loved both their children equally instead of turning us into the responsible one and the golden child. What I got instead was evidence of who they really were when their entitlement was challenged. I immediately called the police non-emergency line and filed a report for theft and property damage. The dispatcher was professional and sympathetic, taking down all the details and giving me a case number for reference. She said an officer would follow up within a few business days to potentially collect evidence and take a formal statement. I told her I had extensive video documentation of everything that had occurred, and she said that would be very helpful for any potential prosecution. The police report was now on record, creating an official trail of what had happened regardless of whether I ultimately decided to press charges. Friday morning Portland time, I arranged for an emergency cleaning service. A company called Sparkle Home had availability, and sent a team of 3 people to assess the damage and begin restoration. I remained in London but gave them access through my smart lock system and watched on cameras as they worked. They documented the damage with their own photographs for their records and my insurance claim. Mrs. Chen brought over coffee and pastries for the cleaning crew, bless her heart, and spent time talking with them about what Shed witnessed over the past week. She told them Shed'd be happy to provide a witness statement if needed, and I made a note to send her flowers and a thank you gift when I returned. The social media war began in earnest Friday afternoon. Brittany posted a lengthy Facebook rant about being thrown out of a family member's house with nowhere to go. She painted herself and Tyler as victims of my cruelty, claiming they'd been staying temporarily at a family home and were suddenly evicted without warning or compassion. She wrote about how some people valued material possessions more than human relationships and how disappointed she was to learn that money changed people. The post got immediate traction from people who didn't know the full story, with comments expressing sympathy and outrage at my supposed heartlessness. Several people offered Brittany and Tyler their couches or spare rooms, and Brittany thanked them publicly while talking about the kindness of real friends versus fake family. I showed the post to Madison and Rachel, asking for advice on whether to respond publicly. Madison cautioned against engaging on social media because it rarely made situations better and often provided ammunition for the other side. Rachel argued that I should tell my side of the story because people deserve to know the truth and Brittany's lies would spread if left unchallenged. I spent an hour weighing the options before deciding that truth mattered more than taking the high road. I created a single comprehensive post with all the receipts attached. I wrote a timeline of events, starting with discovering their plans through text messages, installing security cameras, the certified letter denying permission to enter, and then their choice to invade anyway. I included shortened video clips showing my father entering with an unauthorized key, Tyler and Brittany moving in, the party, the theft, the property damage, and finally their spiteful destruction while leaving. I posted it to Facebook with a simple caption that said, "Since false narratives are being spread about me, here's what actually happened with evidence attached." I tagged my parents, Tyler and Brittany, so they'd be notified, and I set the post to public so anyone could see it. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, people who'd sympathized with Brittany's version were backtracking and apologizing for jumping to conclusions. The comments flooded in faster than I could read them. People wrote that they would have called the police immediately. Others said it'd been far nicer than the situation warranted. Several people tagged Tyler and Brittany, asking them to explain the theft shown in the videos. Former friends of Tyler commented that this behavior was typical of how Head always operated. Brittany and Tyler both deleted their original posts, but screenshots lived forever and people had already saved and shared the evidence I'd posted. The extended family division became clear through social media reactions and private messages. My grandmother, my father's mother, called me directly to say she was shocked and disappointed in how her son and grandson had behaved. She apologized for not seeing the favoritism sooner and told me I'd done the right thing protecting my property. 3 of my aunts commented on my post supporting me and expressing disbelief at what their brother had enabled. 2 of my uncles, including Uncle Frank, didn't comment publicly, but I heard through Rachel that they were arguing with my father about his role in the situation. My cousins almost universally supported me, with several sharing my post to their own pages and adding comments about respecting boundaries and the importance of consent even in family relationships. Friday afternoon brought the false emergency that should have been my final straw with my father but somehow still shocked me. My phone rang with my father's number, and when I answered, his voice was shaking with what sounded like genuine distress. He said my mother was in the hospital with a heart attack, and I needed to come home immediately. My heart stopped for a moment, flooding with fear and guilt. Before my rational brain kicked in, I asked which hospital, and he said Providence Portland Medical Center. I told him I'd call the hospital directly to get information, and he quickly said they wouldn't give me information over the phone but I should just get on a plane. That's when I knew he was lying. I called Providence Portland Medical Center and asked for the patient information desk. I gave them my mother's full name and date of birth. The representative checked their system and told me there was no patient by that name currently admitted or in the emergency department. I asked them to double-check, and they confirmed no one with that name had been admitted in the past 72 hours. My father had fabricated a medical emergency to manipulate me into coming home early, probably hoping it'd be so emotionally distraught that it'd forgive everything and drop the consequences. Instead, his lie did the opposite. It showed me Head weaponize even the fear of my mother's death to get what he wanted, and that level of manipulation was beyond anything I'd imagined even him capable of. I texted the family group chat with a screenshot of my call to the hospital showing no patient found. I wrote that my father had lied about my mother being hospitalized in an attempt to manipulate me, and I wanted everyone to know what kind of tactics were being used. The responses came quickly. Even Uncle Frank texted that lying about a medical emergency was too far and completely unacceptable. My grandmother called my father and yelled at him, according to Rachel, who overheard through the family gossip network. Several relatives who'd been neutral or on my parents' side suddenly started questioning what else they'd been lied to about. My father's credibility, already damaged by the video evidence, was now completely destroyed among extended family members who valued honesty, even in difficult situations. Tyler tried his own manipulation Friday evening by texting me that Head had a job interview scheduled for Friday morning but missed it because of all this drama, and now his big opportunity was gone because of me. I asked what company the interview was with. He said I wouldn't know it. I said try me anyway. He stopped responding. I knew he was lying because Tyler hadn't had a job interview in months, probably longer. had gotten comfortable living off my parents, and hadn't been seriously job hunting despite claiming that was his priority. The lie was so transparent it was almost sad, but it also reminded me why boundaries were necessary. Tyler had learned from my parents that lying and manipulating were acceptable tools for getting what you wanted, and it enabled that behavior for too long by accepting the lies and making excuses for him. My mother called Friday night from my father's phone, probably assuming I'd blocked her number but hadn't thought to block his yet. Her voice was quieter than usual, less aggressive, almost pleading. She said they needed to really talk this time, in person when I returned. I told her no, we didn't need to talk in person because everything that needed to be said had been said. She insisted they were willing to apologize and make things right if I'd just give them a chance. I said if she was really sorry, she could apologize right now over the phone. She said some things were too important for phone conversations and required face-to-face communication. I told her that was just another manipulation tactic to get me in a room where I'd be pressured by their physical presence and emotional performance. She hung up without another word, and I blocked both their numbers to prevent further attempts at contact. Wednesday of the following week, 13 days after ID initially left for London, I returned to Portland 3 days earlier than ID had told my parents I'd be back. My flight landed at 2 in the afternoon, and Madison picked me up from the airport in her car. She asked if I was ready to see my house again, and I told her I'd been watching it on cameras for nearly 2 weeks, so I knew what to expect. But knowing intellectually and experiencing emotionally turned out to be very different things. We drove through familiar Portland streets toward my neighborhood, and with every block closer to my house, I felt my chest tightening with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Walking through my front door for the first time since the violation felt surreal. The professional cleaners had done excellent work restoring the visible cleanliness, but signs of what had happened remained everywhere if you knew where to look. There were scuff marks on the walls where they'd carelessly moved furniture. The carpet in my bedroom had a faint discoloration where Brittany had poured out the shampoo despite professional treatment. Several of my possessions were simply gone, stolen and probably sold or discarded by now. The energy of the space felt different too. Less like a sanctuary and more like a crime scene, which I supposed it technically was. I walked through each room slowly, processing the reality of what my family had done to my home and my sense of security. Madison helped me conduct a thorough inventory of everything stolen or damaged. We made lists room by room, noting each missing item and every mark left behind. The kitchen was missing 6 complete place settings of my dishes. 3 of my better lamps were gone. The Wi-Fi router had been stolen. Most of my nice towels were missing. 2 small appliances had vanished. All the food from my refrigerator had spoiled when they unplugged it, and various bath products and personal items were gone. The living room had rips in my sofa from careless moving, scratches on my desk from Tyler's gaming setup, and scuff marks on the walls. The bedroom carpet had the shampoo stain, and several pieces of my jewelry were missing, including my grandmother's necklace that had significant sentimental value beyond its monetary worth. We calculated the total loss at $4,900 in stolen and damaged property. I had receipts for most of the items, photographs proving ID owned the jewelry, and of course video evidence of the theft and damage occurring. Madison said this was more than enough for a civil lawsuit to recover damages, and the video evidence would make criminal prosecution relatively straightforward if I chose that route. She asked me what I wanted to do moving forward, and I told her I wasn't sure yet. Part of me wanted them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Another part of me just wanted them out of my life and the whole nightmare over. Madison said I didn't have to decide immediately, and could take time to process everything before determining next steps. The evidence package I'd been compiling was now 300 pages printed and organized in a binder. Every video clip had a timestamp and description. Every screenshot was labeled and categorized. Every text message was included with context. I had witness statements from Mrs. Chen and Rachel. I had the certified letter proving ID explicitly denied them access. I had receipts and valuations for all stolen property. I had police report numbers. It was comprehensive enough to support either criminal or civil action, whichever direction I decided to pursue. Looking at that binder, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. I'd proven my case beyond any doubt, but the evidence represented the death of relationships with people I'd once loved. My grandmother called that evening and asked if I'd be willing to have a mediated family meeting. She said my parents genuinely wanted to talk and make things right, and Shed volunteered to facilitate the conversation to keep it productive. I trusted my grandmother more than anyone else in the family because Shed always been fair and honest even when it was uncomfortable. I told her I'd agree to one meeting at a neutral public location with Madison present as my support. We scheduled it for Saturday morning at a downtown coffee shop where we wouldn't have privacy to yell but would have enough space to talk seriously. Tyler and Brittany were specifically not invited because I had nothing to say to them and didn't trust myself to remain calm if I saw them in person. Saturday morning arrived with gray Portland skies and light rain, weather that matched my mood perfectly. The coffee shop was a place I'd never been before and would probably never return to, which seemed appropriate for a conversation that would either end or restart relationships. Madison and I arrived first, taking a table near the back with good visibility of the entrance. My parents arrived next with my grandmother, and we all sat down awkwardly. Rachel joined via video call on my laptop, positioned so she could see and hear everything despite being across the country. My grandmother started by setting ground rules. Everyone speaks respectfully, no interruptions. Listen to understand rather than to respond. And the goal was finding resolution rather than winning an argument. I spoke first using a prepared statement I'd written to keep myself focused and prevent emotional derailment. I chronicled years of unequal treatment between Tyler and me, giving specific examples with dollar amounts where relevant. I talked about working 3 jobs for college while Tyler's education was fully funded. I mentioned the $5,000 loan never repaid, the car damage I'd paid to fix, the countless times I'd helped without reciprocation. Then I described the specific violation of having my home invaded, my privacy destroyed, my property stolen, and my boundaries trampled. I ended by saying clearly that I didn't hate them, I was hurt by them, and I was done accepting treatment that showed they didn't respect me as an autonomous adult with rights to my own property and decisions. My father's initial response was defensive, claiming they were just trying to help Tyler get on his feet and didn't think it was such a serious issue. I pointed out that violating someone's home without permission was definitionally a serious issue regardless of intent. My mother said they didn't think it would matter that much since I had plenty of space and they assumed I'd understand once I came home. I told her that assumption was the problem because they'd never asked what I thought or wanted, they'd simply decided my property was available for their use. The conversation was going in circles until my grandmother intervened with a statement that surprised everyone at the table. Grandmother looked at my parents and said directly that they'd enabled Tyler his entire life while expecting Harper to be self-sufficient from a young age. She said the differential treatment had been obvious to her for years, but Shed thought it wasn't her place to interfere in how they raised their children. Now she realized her silence had been a mistake because the pattern had reached a point where they thought it was acceptable to steal from one child to support another. She told my father that Head always favored Tyler because they shared interests in sports and tools, while Head never understood my more academic and introspective nature. She told my mother that Shed coddled Tyler because Head been a difficult baby and Shed never broken the habit of treating him as more fragile than he actually was. The breakthrough moment came when my mother started crying real genuine tears rather than the manipulative ones I'd seen on camera. She said through her sobs that she could see it now, see how they'd treated us differently and justified it by telling themselves Tyler needed more help. She admitted Shed told herself for years that I was naturally more capable and independent so I didn't need as much support, but she recognized now that Shed created that situation by forcing me to be independent while encouraging Tyler's dependence. She said she was sorry for the years of inequality and especially sorry for violating my home and trust. She looked me in the eyes and said she understood if I never forgave her, but she wanted me to know she finally understood what she'd done wrong. My father remained silent during my mother's apology, arms crossed over his chest, jaw tight. Grandmother turned to him and asked if he had anything to say. He muttered that he still thought family should help family and I had the resources to support Tyler. I felt my temper flare and told him that helping requires asking, not taking, and definitely not stealing. He said he didn't see it as stealing since it was family property. I responded that it was my property, purchased with my money, titled in my name, and his belief that family relationships entitled him to my possessions was exactly the problem. Grandmother actually raised her voice at him, something I'd never heard her do, telling him to stop being stubborn and admit he was wrong. The shock of his mother challenging him seemed to crack something in my father's exterior. We moved into negotiation of terms for any potential ongoing relationship. I presented 5 conditions that were non-negotiable if they wanted to have contact with me going forward. First, a full written apology, acknowledging specifically what they'd done wrong and why it was wrong. Second, repayment of all stolen and damaged property, totaling $4,900. Third, no contact with Tyler that involved me, meaning they couldn't pass messages between us or advocate for reconciliation on his behalf. Fourth, respect for my boundaries going forward, including never entering my property without explicit advance permission. Fifth, attendance at family therapy if they wanted to rebuild our relationship beyond surface-level politeness. My mother agreed to all conditions immediately without hesitation. My father balked at the repayment amount, saying that was too much money for them to come up with. I told him the alternative was filing the police report I'd already prepared and pursuing civil court action, which Madison added would cost them significantly more once court fees and legal expenses were included. Madison pulled up a quick calculation showing that fighting the case in court could easily cost them $15,000 or more between lawyer fees, court costs, and potential judgments. My father realized he had no leverage and no good options. He asked if we could do a payment plan rather than the full amount immediately. I agreed to accept $2,000 upfront and $500 per month for 6 months, but I wanted the terms in writing as a legally binding promissory note. Madison drafted the promissory note right there on her laptop, including the payment schedule, late payment penalties, and acknowledgement that the debt arose from compensation for theft and property damage. Both my parents had to sign it, and Madison signed as witness. The document specified that if they missed 2 consecutive payments, the full remaining balance would become due immediately, and I reserved the right to file criminal charges. My father signed with visible reluctance, his signature angry and pressed hard into the paper. My mother signed with a shaking hand. I took photos of the signed document and Madison said she'd file it officially as a legal contract when we left. My mother's apology was specific, tearful, and seemed genuine. She acknowledged the favoritism over the years, the violation of my home, the theft of my property, and the disrespect of my autonomy. She said she'd failed me as a parent by not treating both her children equally and by teaching Tyler that he deserved special treatment rather than teaching him to work for his own success. She said she was sorry and would understand if I needed space and time before I could trust her again. I told her I accepted her apology, but she was right that I needed space and time. Trust was broken easily but rebuilt slowly, and I wasn't ready to pretend everything was fine just because she'd finally acknowledged the problem. My father's apology was stiff and minimal at first. He said he was sorry they'd entered my house without explicit permission. I told him that wasn't good enough and he needed to try again with actual acknowledgement of what he'd done. Grandmother glared at him with an expression that could melt steel. My father sighed heavily and said he was sorry they'd violated my home, my privacy, and my trust by entering without permission and taking property that didn't belong to them. He admitted it was wrong regardless of his intentions or beliefs about family obligations. It wasn't the most heartfelt apology I'd ever received, but it was specific and acknowledged wrongdoing, which was more than I'd expected from him. I said thank you and told him I accepted it. The topic of Tyler was delicate but necessary. My mother said Tyler was still their son and they couldn't just abandon him. I clarified that I wasn't asking them to abandon him, I was asking them to stop enabling his bad behavior and stop expecting me to participate in supporting him. I told them Tyler was my brother and I didn't hate him, but I wasn't having any relationship with him until he fundamentally changed his approach to life. My father said I couldn't expect them to not help Tyler at all, and I said they should help him get a job, learn responsibility, and grow up rather than helping him avoid consequences and maintain dependence. My mother said that was fair. My father nodded but didn't verbally agree. We left it at that fragile understanding. 2 months passed with my parents making their scheduled payments on time. The first payment of $2,000 arrived via certified check within 3 days of our coffee shop meeting. The subsequent monthly payments of $500 each came through bank transfer on the first of each month. My mother called weekly. Conversations that started awkwardly but gradually became more comfortable as we established a new normal. She told me about their life, asked about my work, and never once asked me to reconsider my boundaries regarding Tyler. My father texted occasionally with brief messages that were civil if not warm. They were attending family therapy together, and my mother shared that the therapist had validated many of my complaints about the family dynamics and was working with them on recognizing and changing their enabling patterns. Tyler and Brittany's trajectory took the path I'd predicted. They'd moved into a cheaper apartment on the other side of Portland with help from my parents for the security deposit. But this time, my parents insisted on a written repayment agreement. Tyler got a job at a warehouse doing inventory management, entry-level work that was below what he thought he deserved, but was actually employment with a steady paycheck. Brittany started working retail at a clothing store after her influencer dreams failed to materialize into actual income. They were struggling financially in ways they'd never experienced before because no one was subsidizing their lifestyle anymore. Tyler remained resentful toward me with no direct contact, which was perfectly fine by me. I heard updates through my mother but made it clear I didn't want detailed information about his life. My own healing journey required professional help. I started seeing a therapist to process the family trauma and understand the patterns that had shaped my life. Dr. Morrison was a woman in her 50s who specialized in family dynamics and boundary setting. Through our sessions, I came to understand that the incident with my house was the culmination of a lifetime of training that my needs were secondary to Tyler's wants. I'd been taught through repeated experience that being the responsible one meant accepting less so Tyler could have more. I'd internalized the belief that my value came from my usefulness to others rather than my inherent worth as a person. Breaking those patterns required conscious effort and constant reinforcement that I deserved respect and had the right to protect my space and resources. The house itself underwent a transformation that was both practical and symbolic. I had the carpet professionally cleaned again and eventually replaced entirely because I couldn't walk on it without thinking about Brittany's spiteful act. I redecorated my master bedroom completely with new bedding, new curtains, and new artwork that I chose specifically to represent this new chapter of my life. I painted the walls a soft sage green that felt fresh and peaceful. I bought new dishes to replace the ones Tyler had stolen, selecting a pattern I loved rather than practical basics. I upgraded my home security system even further with additional cameras and sensors, because feeling safe in my space mattered more than the cost. Gradually, my house stopped feeling like a crime scene and started feeling like home again. Family gatherings became complicated negotiations rather than automatic obligations. Thanksgiving approached with my grandmother hosting as she always did. She called to invite me and explicitly said my parents would be there, but Tyler and Brittany would not because she'd set that boundary out of respect for me. I appreciated her consideration but told her I needed to think about it. I discussed it with Dr. Morrison, who encouraged me to attend if I felt ready, but to have an exit plan if the situation became uncomfortable. I decided to go for a limited time, arriving late and leaving early. which gave me control over my level of exposure to potentially difficult interactions. Thanksgiving dinner was awkward, but not awful. My parents were carefully polite, almost formal in their interactions with me. My mother complimented my new hairstyle. My father asked about my work and actually listened to my answer. We didn't discuss Tyler or the house situation. We didn't pretend everything was fine. We simply existed in the same space with civility and basic respect, which was honestly more than I'd expected. Some extended family members were warm and welcoming, while others were distant and judgmental. It accepted that I couldn't control their opinions, and I was okay with having a smaller circle of family who actually valued me. Rachel and I became closer than we'd ever been as adults. We talked daily through text messages and video calls, sharing our lives in ways we hadn't before. She told me that watching me stand up to our parents had inspired her to set firmer boundaries in her own life with her in-laws who'd been overstepping for years. We planned a sister's trip to Hawaii for the following spring, just the two of us, celebrating the family we chose to maintain and strengthen. Rachel said this whole experience had shown her who I really was underneath the people-pleasing habits our family had created, and she liked this version of me better. I told her I liked this version of me better too. My grandmother took me to lunch one Saturday at a quiet restaurant near her home. She ordered us both the salmon special and then looked at me with her direct gaze that had always seen through pretense. She said she was proud of me for standing up for myself even when it was hard and even when it meant conflict with people I loved. She apologized for not recognizing the favoritism sooner and for not intervening when she'd noticed Tyler being given advantages I never received. She said my parents were learning slowly that love wasn't the same as control, and that respecting your children meant respecting their boundaries even when you disagreed with them. I told her I appreciated her support more than she knew and that having at least one elder in my corner made all the difference. Uncle Frank surprised me by calling 3 months after the initial incident. He apologized for siding with my parents initially and said he'd been operating under incomplete information and outdated assumptions about family hierarchy. He told me he'd watched the videos I'd posted and realized my parents and Tyler had been completely in the wrong. He said he'd also reflected on his own parenting and recognized ways he'd played favorites with his own kids, and he was working to correct that now before the damage became irreparable. He thanked me for not backing down even when the family pressure was intense because my example had forced several people to examine their own behavior. I accepted his apology cautiously but appreciated his willingness to admit he'd been wrong. Tyler's situation changed again when Brittany left him 3 months after they'd moved into their own apartment. She couldn't handle the reality of both of them working regular jobs and living within their means rather than being subsidized by family. She blamed Tyler for not being ambitious enough and blamed me in a final social media post for destroying what could have been a great situation for them. Then she deleted all her social media accounts and apparently moved back to her home state. Tyler moved back into my parents' basement temporarily, and I braced myself for my mother to ask me to give him another chance. Instead, she told me they'd given Tyler a 6-month deadline to find another place to live. She said therapy had taught them they weren't helping him by letting him avoid adult responsibilities, and enabling him was actually hurting his development as a person. 4 months after the original incident, my security system alerted me to someone attempting to access my back door. I was at work and immediately checked the cameras to see Tyler trying different keys and eventually trying to force the lock. I called the police without hesitation. They arrived within 10 minutes and found Tyler still on my property. He claimed he just needed to talk to me and didn't think it was a big deal to come by. The police informed him that attempting to enter someone's property after being explicitly told to stay away constituted trespassing and potentially stalking if it continued. They filed a report and warned him that any further attempts would result in arrest. I didn't press charges that time, but I sent a cease and desist letter through Madison, making it clear that any contact or attempted contact would result in legal action. Tyler finally seemed to understand that boundaries were real and had consequences. 6 months after everything started, An unexpected letter arrived in my mailbox. It was handwritten on actual paper, not an email or text, in Tyler's messy handwriting that I recognized from years of birthday cards and grocery lists. The letter said he was sorry for violating my home and my trust. He wrote that he was working on becoming someone I could be proud of, and he didn't expect forgiveness but wanted me to know he understood what had done wrong. He mentioned he'd gotten a promotion at the warehouse and moved into a studio apartment that was small but entirely his own. He said it'd been right to set boundaries and he needed to fall before he could learn to stand on his own. The letter ended without asking for anything. No request to meet or talk or reconcile. Just an acknowledgement and an apology. I cried reading Tyler's letter. Not from sadness but from the release of tension I'd been carrying for months. I showed it to Dr. Morrison during our next session, and she said it showed genuine growth and insight, that Tyler had written it without expecting anything in return. She asked if I wanted to respond, and I said I wasn't ready yet but I'd keep the letter. Maybe someday I'd reach out to him, but that day wasn't today, and might not be for a long time. The important thing was that Tyler had finally taken responsibility for his actions, and that was the first step toward potentially having a healthy relationship in the future. My reflections on the entire experience filled pages in my journal. I wrote about how setting boundaries wasn't cruel. It was necessary for maintaining self-respect and healthy relationships. I explored how you teach people how to treat you through what behaviors you accept and what you challenge. I examined the idea that family doesn't mean unconditional access to your life, your space, or your resources. I worked through the understanding that love without respect is manipulation wearing a mask. I accepted that my worth wasn't determined by my family's approval but by my own values and choices. I came to believe that compassion and boundaries could coexist, that I could care about people while refusing to be victimized by them. The final lesson crystallized one evening as I stood in my home office looking at a framed photograph from the day ID closed on this house. In the picture, I was holding the keys with the biggest smile on my face, representing pride and achievement and the fulfillment of years of hard work. I remembered the joy of that moment. I remembered the violation of watching my family invade this space. I felt the peace of the current moment where ID reclaimed my home and my autonomy. I realized the trap ID set wasn't just the security cameras. The real trap was forcing my family to reveal who they truly were when they thought they could get away with bad behavior. And equally important, the trap had revealed who I truly was when I stopped accepting mistreatment. That night I wrote in my journal, "They tried to take my house but instead I took back my life." The best trap I ever set was the one that freed me from caring more about their approval than my own dignity. I used to think being a good daughter and sister meant sacrificing myself for family harmony. Now I understand that real family respects boundaries, values consent, and treats each other with basic human decency. The people who can't do that aren't family in any meaningful sense, regardless of shared DNA. I've built a new family from the people who stood by me, respected my choices, and celebrated my strength rather than punishing it. And I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable bad behavior even when that refusal causes conflict. I closed my journal and looked around my peaceful home. Every object represented a choice ID made. Every space reflected my preferences. Every locked door protected my autonomy. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was proof that I could defend what mattered, enforce my boundaries, and prioritize my well-being without apologizing. My parents were slowly learning to respect me. Tyler was slowly learning to respect himself. I was learning that my value didn't come from serving others but from honoring myself. The trap had worked perfectly, catching everyone in the truth of their character and forcing change that would never have happened through polite conversation or passive acceptance. The security cameras were still there, still recording, still protecting, but now they were just one part of a larger system of boundaries I'd built around my life. I'd learned to say no without guilt. I'd learned to demand respect without apology. I'd learned that conflict wasn't always bad if it led to honesty and growth. Most importantly, I'd learned that I was worth protecting, Worth defending. Worth fighting for. My family had tried to treat me like a community property, and I'd taught them I was a person with rights they had to respect. That lesson had cost me relationships I'd once valued, but it had gained me something infinitely more precious, which was self-respect and the freedom to live authentically without constantly performing for approval. I'd never truly receive anyway. So what do you think? Have you ever had to set hard boundaries with family members who didn't respect your space or your choices? Have you caught someone doing something they thought they'd get away with? Drop a comment below and share your story because I'd love to hear how you handled it. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe to this channel for more real-life drama and lessons about standing up for yourself. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to protect what's yours and demand the respect you deserve. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you're worth defending and your boundaries matter. Take care of yourselves out there, know your worth, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting your peace. Until next time, stand strong and respect yourself enough to demand respect from others.